Good evening. I'm John Bailey. This is People to be Heard, the program where people who have something to say have their say. And I'm joined tonight by Jim Benerofe, and tonight you've got Michael Kraver, a young man in White Plains running for Common Council. You've got Alan Goldman running for Common Council, and Saad Siddiqui running for Common Council. And Jim, why don't you start off?
All right, the big question, why are you running?
Well, shall I start since I'm the senior member of the team?
Go ahead.
Absolutely.
The business, by a year, that's right. The business climate in downtown is terrible, and it only seems to be getting worse. The sales tax revenue is flat. The parking issues are horrible. People aren't coming to the restaurants. They're not dining. They're not coming to do business. They're not walking. They're not even going to live theater. We have a live theater here. It's very poorly attended, all because of various things. So I've decided in my senior years that I would like to stick my 2 cents into this and hope I can change the business climate in the White Plains area.
Okay.
Oh, no, please.
I am a White Plains High School native.
Right.
White Plains native. I graduated White Plains High School in 1995, and when the time came to decide where I was going to raise my family, I knew it had to be a community like White Plains because I appreciated what White Plains had to offer me when I was growing up. So I moved back here in 2006. My daughter is now 7, and she's in the White Plains schools. And as much as I love White Plains and think we have a great community, I've been upset that we're starting to fall behind communities that we compete with. Like Alan said, the business climate isn't keeping up. I worry that the city government has not been paying enough attention to the needs of the schools. And I just don't think that our great community is reaching its potential.
All right.
So that's why I'm throwing my hat in.
Right. Saad.
Like Mike, I am also a White Plains High School graduate. Graduated in '96, a year after he did. And with the exception of the time away I was in college, I've lived here continuously for 24 years. And in that time, I have to say, now I have a law practice, which is based out of White Plains, so I practice in the courts. So between working and living in this city and living here with my family, I felt that there are a lot of things that need improvement in this city. As we are a good city, certainly, but I certainly think we could be a lot better. And given the issues with the business climate, given the issues with just, I think, a way some of the development has gone and the tenor of that development, we need to really reevaluate how we've been doing things, because ultimately my concern is that many of the comparable communities are ultimately going to lap us. And that's something I want to make sure doesn't happen.
I see. What do you feel the Common Council in its present shape has done wrong?
I think there has not been enough of a critical analysis of many of the proposals that have been put forth. If you look at some of the developments that they have okayed, spot zoning certainly is an issue, and the lack of a comprehensive plan, and they push for a comprehensive plan, and which is what I find interesting, that many of the incumbents that are up for re-election this year have all said that they've supported a comprehensive plan, and yet we don't have one. And it's put us in a bit of a precarious situation, I think, with the development.
I think the last time we did one was around 2011.
I think it was updated in 06.
06.
97 was the comprehensive plan,
Right.
and then 06 was the last update.
Yeah.
And
How time flies.
Yes,
exactly.
time flies.
So we're ultimately working off of a document that's 19 years old, and as much as some
Like
of the,
ancient Rome.
well, as much as people want to say it has good bones, so many things have changed since 1997. So much has changed since 2006. That's affected the way businesses are operated in this city. So that's certainly one thing I think that should we all get on the Common Council, that's one thing we're looking to change.
And just to pick up on that, well, we talk about the business climate, and a lot of people, when you get into the conversation, they talk about how shopping habits have shifted online, right? Which is true. There are certainly pressures on businesses that go beyond White Plains that the current Common Council can't be blamed for. But I don't think that the folks on the council now have done enough to evolve as business habits have changed, shopping habits have changed, as preferences for people who are looking to buy homes have changed. So whether the evolution comes in the form of an update to the comprehensive plan, which I certainly support, or just by simply recognizing the challenges that are facing our city and being proactive about dealing with them, I think that's a large part of why the city's stagnant and the energy we hope to bring to change it.
And as another example, at the St. Patrick's Day events, they closed the downtown, the heart of the downtown area for 2 hours, really hurting the bars and the restaurants to participate in the parade. Now, they were not given notice until just prior to the parade that they were going to have to close. And I was down there walking in that vast canyon of nothingness after the parade. And most of the bars lost anywhere between 30 and 40% of their business and revenue for that day. That's not a way to treat people down in the downtown area at all.
Well, and they also cleared them out.
They cleared them
In
out.
the evening.
That's
In
correct.
the evening, yeah. And then they had to go back in.
They
so-
tried to go back
yeah.
in. And once people left that community, they were
Yeah.
gone.
Interesting. Well, again, now, Jim.
What specifically, see, the election's over, you've all been elected.
Yeah.
Now, what specific legislation would you propose? You know,
To
what-
help better get back the
Yeah.
city in the right direction.
Right.
Well, one of the biggest comments that I've had throughout the years that I've been in the downtown, and I've been in the downtown almost 30 years now, is the parking issue. That's the first complaint everyone in the business community comes at me with. We have meters are here to stay forever. They're not going anywhere. You go anywhere, you have to feed the meters. But the municipal lots are 24 hours a day. No, I'm sorry. 9 o'clock, you want to park, you want to end it at 9 o'clock, where the municipals end at 9 o'clock, that's the way it should go. Now, we also know that the parking authority brings in a lot of money. I think it's about 24 million.
Yes, the parking department.
Parking
Absolutely.
department, parking authority.
Parking
And
authority
of
doesn't
the
exist.
three agencies,
Parking
the
department.
parking department.
Right.
You have the fire, the police, and the parking department. The only one that increased their personnel is the parking department.
You know, that is intriguing. But how would you replace that revenue? What would you look for? Lowering the rates, lowering the hours that parking is enforced?
Well, there's a
how
couple.
would
I
you
mean,
replace that revenue?
I would think if I had the actual full time, if I had the opportunity to look at the entire budget, I know we can replace some of the money somewhere along the line.
Well, certainly, just even what Alan was talking about, given the nature of the business climate right now, if the goal is to, I guess, loosen the stranglehold that the parking department has in this city, then certainly it's going to incentivize people to come and shop.
Right.
Because that's the biggest issue.
Right.
A lot of people don't want to come and frequent our businesses. We don't get walk-in traffic because people don't want to sit and risk walking downtown and then come back to find a $25 ticket on their car.
Yeah, the city is not in the business of being a parking garage. So if we are willing to break our addiction to parking revenue and potentially accept less money in parking revenue because we change the parking policies that don't deter people from coming downtown, then I think what you'll see, you'll make it up partially in sales tax revenue, right? Some of the storefronts that are currently vacant will start to fill up. Then those storefronts that are then filled will have people who work there who will have money to spend in our downtown. And ironically, if we get a better parking policy, we may even get more parking revenue. Because if you stop driving people away from the downtown and you have more people coming, at least if it's a sensible parking policy that isn't necessarily charging them 24/7 or hitting them up for a $25 ticket when they get a ticket at all, you could even have the parking revenue itself increase.
Jim?
You talked, or somebody had something about spot zoning. What specifically are you referring to as spot zoning?
I don't know who used the term, but I've definitely heard a lot of people use it.
I did use
Oh,
it.
sorry. I hear it. Well, then I'll let you.
Go ahead, Saad.
I think essentially the way a lot of this is done right now with the way the development's been going on, where a developer will come with a specific proposal for a particular site. And if the zoning is not in accordance to facilitate that particular proposal, the zoning changes. And rather than looking at it essentially piecemeal with the development, if you have a comprehensive plan in place, you have a much better idea of what developments are appropriate for what parts of our city. Because as it also stands, look at where the development has been going. Where is it even geographically concentrated? It's in the downtown area. And with the exception of FASNY, all we've been seeing is the development of the downtown area.
Very similar developments, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Very
I mean,
similar.
ultimately,
Yes.
what you're having is just this homogeny of luxury rentals
Right.
that are being put up some of them with some retail outlets, inside of the development.
Well, that's what I think will probably end up bringing up your sales tax, though.
Some of it.
Some of it.
Some of it, but not all of it.
Right.
And I think that you also have other parts of the city. You have Battle Hill. You also have the north end of town. I live right in the vicinity of Church Street School. And forget development, just the infrastructure, the potholes on the streets. I mean, there's some issues that certainly we need to address.
But in all fairness, we had a very late wet spring, so they're really behind on pothole repairing. That is why the potholes aren't fixed yet.
But how about last year, or the year before, or the year before that?
Well, I just wanted to pick up on what Saad was saying in response to your question. So, I mean, certainly a way to a comprehensive plan is important, so that we're not getting homogeneous development, as he said. But I think, in addition to a comprehensive plan, part of what's important is a change in perspective. Right? The current perspective seems to be that as many luxury apartment buildings as we can add, the better. I appreciate that we've added a few of those buildings. I think the people who live in those buildings bring an important component to White Plains. My issue with it is that when all we're building, when all the redevelopment we see is luxury apartment buildings, then we're only moving in, it's really two types of people. It's young professionals who have enough money to afford expensive rent, or it's empty nesters. And
That's $3,000 a month.
Right,
Yeah.
and there's a huge gap in between those people, which is people who are looking to raise a family, people who may be looking to settle here over the long term, and people who are looking for different kinds of housing options, whether it's condos or townhouses, or even 3-bedroom rentals. Because in the buildings that we see, the units tend to be much smaller. So the point is, whatever we can do, whether it's an update to the comprehensive plan or simply just a change in perspective when a request for a zoning change comes up, to diversify the kinds of housing that are being built in the city and make the city what it was when we grew up, which was a city that was welcoming to people at different stages of the life cycle and various income levels.
Yeah. Jim?
What about the... Oh, well, let me go back to FASNY for a second. That's the
Never heard
hot
of it.
button.
Hey, I forgot all about
What does
that.
FASNY stand for?
What? Let's assume that it were to get voted down. What would you do with the property, or what would you like to see be done with it? I mean, the owners would have control over it, but
I mean, remember that it's zoned to be private housing, and we're going through this process because to be the school that they want it to be, they need a special permit. So I don't know what. I guess we could have a conversation about proactively changing the zoning to be something different, but I would assume if FASNY does get voted down and they realize, if they get to the point where they realize that their school is not going to be built, I guess the working assumption should be that whatever comes will be consistent with the way it's zoned.
the zoning there for, they could comfortably build, if you go environmentally with the site,
Right.
something like 35 or 40
40
homes.
homes. That's
So you're now
that's the target.
talking about homes that would be very expensive. I would imagine they'd have to be between $1.5 million and $2 million to make sense for a developer.
I really don't know. I mean, the community that surrounds it, I don't think warrants
It's
$2 million
basically-
homes.
Well,
Now,
I mean,
but
now
I agree with you.
Now.
I agree with you. I don't think so. I think that what I'm trying to say is that I don't know if housing would work best there. You might be able to come up with some kind of.
Well, I would love to see a golf course be built. I mean, I'm a big golfer, so
I know.
But I would like to see, actually, if it's not going to be housing, it's got to be condominiums. You know, some sort of small condominium, two townhouse type condominiums.
That might really work.
That might work with maybe 100 condominium, 100 unit. I live at Gedney Commons. It's 75 units, very comfortable. It's on the corner of Stepanek and Ridgeway. I mean, something like that I could actually see on that property. It wouldn't be too obtrusive to the community that's already there. Whether that's going to happen, I don't know.
You know, we agree about many things. I'm not sure I fully agree with Mr. Goldman here. If it were built to be, I'm not in a position to say what price the homes would go for. But if we work from your question and assume that it was built to be expensive homes in the 1.5 to $2 million range, I think that would be a good thing. I hear from when I'm out talking to voters, I hear from a lot of real estate brokers who say that at the upper end of the White Plains housing market, they have a very difficult time selling homes because they're losing people. And White Plains has always lost some people to more expensive communities like Chappaqua, Scarsdale, Rybrook. So to some degree, that's not new. But a lot of real estate brokers tell me that they have a harder and harder time moving houses in White Plains at that end of the market. So if a developer came in and thought there was a market for homes in that price range, I think it would be a good thing. That would have a ripple effect throughout the White Plains housing market that I would expect to pull the home values up of a lot of homes, not just in the Gedney Farms neighborhood, but across White Plains.
All over. Yes.
Now, development. The President Common Council and some of the folks running now, the incumbents, has offered pilot after pilot to developers over the years.
Yes.
Made concession after concession
Yes.
when the developers are crying money problems.
Right.
And are you, since we are now in such a fantastic stage of development, would you continue the practice of giving payment in lieu of taxes to attract developers?
Well, I don't know. It depends on the project and what the number is. Now they're also charging the developers a recreation, if you want to call it a recreation fee or an open parks fee, based on some sort of formula. I mean, that in itself is almost like a pilot. So it just depends on where, what, and how. I mean, yes, I'd like to see more development come in
on a competitive
basis,
and not,
right?
Not of the hot
We
in
all
the hand.
remember
Hey,
what
we'd
happened
love
with
to
the.
build,
We all remember
but-
what happened with the Ritz-Carlton when all of a sudden 2 more floors were added, unbeknownst to anybody. We don't want to see that happen either.
Well, White Plains has never been great on the numbers.
But I think
We'll try to be better.
But I think that answers the question, because ultimately it's about in really looking at it on a I guess a project by project basis and really determining which scenario is better for the city financially, because in which one can we actually draw out more long-term revenue,
Right.
And that's really what it has to come down to.
Right, because the school district had a tremendous benefit this
Absolutely.
year
Oh, my gosh.
when the 2 big properties pilots ran out,
Right.
and
Right.
it has saved us a lot of money.
Yes.
Right.
We still don't know what they're actually going to be paying in taxes when the bills come out.
Right.
Yes.
But that is why I asked the question, because they made us raise taxes to make up for
Right.
us.
The difference.
Absolutely.
And I would only add that if we're going to be incentivizing development, I think it's important that we be incentivizing development after taking an honest look, whether through a comprehensive plan process or otherwise, of what the city's needs are. But we've already gotten a lot of luxury rental buildings in the last few years, and there are more in the pipeline. So I would hope that's not what we are incentivizing by way of.
And to
I mean, we
piggyback-
need to. Go ahead.
But just to piggyback off of that, and I think
Yeah.
it needs to be addressed, because much of the biggest issue the city's having is that, and if you look at the current makeup of the Common Council now, you're talking about people at a very different stage in their lives than that say Michael and I are in presently. Okay, the people on the Common Council are at a stage in their life where, if they haven't already, they're at the tail end of paying off a mortgage on a home. So here we are, the 2 of us. We've just started the process. I bought my home 4 years ago, so I'm looking forward to another 26 years of mortgage payments. And so between
It's a depressing.
yes, absolutely. But my point is that, as someone starting out as a homeowner who just recently had a son and starting out at that stage of life, what we're left with is a city that isn't very welcoming to people at that stage of life. It's about affordable housing and making sure that those options are available for low-income families, but people who don't even qualify as low income. I mean, let's be honest, if you're making $60,000 or $70,000 a year starting out, years ago when we were growing up, yes, you could absolutely start off. That's much harder to do, especially with the tenor of development that's been going on in this city.
Well, I think when the Bank Street project, which is going up rapidly,
Yes.
opens up, you'll get a good test as
Yes.
to who's going to buy from that burgeoning new millennial market, which is going to solve all our problems.
Well,
Isn't
now-
it? Right. Yeah.
Goose that
we've
laid the
got
golden egg.
about 4,000 or 5,000 apartments coming online.
Right.
Okay. That likely will increase the population by, I would say, a minimum of 5,000 people if they
Yes.
fill up.
Right.
How do you think this is going to impact things politically?
It's
Politically.
it's an interesting question. It's when we're moving people into temporary residence, right, the rental buildings, some folks refer to them as transient residents because they're only here for a couple of years. They're again, I'm not against all of those. I'm not against some of the luxury rentals that have already been built. I don't have a problem with the fact that those folks are a part of our community. I think where the problems come in are that we're not necessarily doing enough to integrate those people into our community. So that means they're not shopping in our downtown businesses as much as we would want them to be. It means they're not as likely to stay in White Plains as we would want them to be when they move away from that phase of their life and need a place to settle. But politically, one of the things I think about, and I don't know that I have the answer, it does impact the way a local democracy works. If the character of if the population of the community keeps shifting towards a transient population, because then you have people who aren't necessarily even here for a full local election cycle, right? The mayor's term is 4 years, and if a larger part of the community becomes dominated by people who don't even live here for 4 years, it's an interesting question. How does that impact democracy? There is a disconnect between having a government that's so focused on bringing those kinds of folks into the city and having a participatory democracy where you would want as many people as possible participating. A lot of those folks, I assume, don't even bother changing their voter registration to be in White Plains because they're not here for long enough. So it's an interesting point that I think the issues it raises are consistent with the other things that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Right. And now let's go down to some of the issues in this campaign. You were with the White Plains Firefighters Union when they were promoting an increase in hiring of firemen at the beginning of the year. How do you propose to pay for bringing on 20 firefighters? That's about a $2 million expense to meet those demands. And I'm sure that there is also lobbying now for increased police.
I've been talking to I'll go quick. And
Go ahead.
The answer is not easy. I would just say the budget vote is soon, right? And to answer that question before the budget vote is very difficult. We have to remember this problem didn't arise, it didn't just drop from the sky. We're not here without a long history of how we got here. We got here because the city doesn't have enough revenue. We got here because the budget process isn't transparent enough, and we don't have this kind of open conversation with the citizens to figure out where we should be looking to cut, to prioritize. So that doesn't directly answer your question. The best answer I can give in the context where we are is we do need to be looking for other places in the budget where we can find what we need to look to wherever it is that they found room for the 12 firefighters they did hire. We need to look at other city functions that are being staffed properly, like parking enforcement. We need to look at expenditures that are going to things like the Renaissance fountain, and we need to look at things like popular community events that will not be easy to cut. But when you talk about having a fully staffed fire department, I think it's quite important that we do that, and we have to find the revenue.
Right. Jim?
Well, I will say a little bit in defense of the city. One of the reasons that they've been able to keep the fire department where it is, our construction regulations are basically pretty damn good in terms of the quality of buildings that are built. And if you check the fire insurance rates, you can see that now.
I think I know where he's going on this.
I can give you an example. I don't know what the fire insurance rates are now in Portchester, but Portchester had many serious fires.
Our regs are very good.
We have a very high rating on the insurance, and the mayor will say this time and time again. It's very high, but we have the highest. Is I think 4 or 5 cities. We're one in that group of the highest insurance rating. You know what? The firehouse, the 30 was it ladder number 34. It's not manned all the time.
Yeah.
That's all I got to do is call the phone. I got a fire in my house and nobody shows up. So you can have the highest rating you want.
Yeah.
We need manpower.
Well, that's right. This is a possible scenario that could develop.
Oh yeah,
So
without a
do
doubt.
that.
With very
the
tragic
police
results, I
issue-
might
Yes.
add.
Yeah. Well, they almost had one.
Yes.
Yes.
On that, when those 47 people
Absolutely.
were found living in one house, and nobody did anything
Anything.
about this, because this is not an unusual condition in
No,
White
it is not.
Plains.
No,
And
it is
so
not.
that, I think, is something they need to pay attention to, but that's just my opinion. They obviously don't feel they want to.
Well, the problem that they have is getting enough people to follow through and go and make the inspections. And they can,
Right.
most
Would you?
cities do
Yes.
that stuff for a while and then they drop off because they.
What is your position on the red light cameras being planned and currently negotiated?
You're looking at me.
Well,
I've done a plan.
No,
Go ahead.
I'm just
You mean
looking.
you're talking about the red light with the in the general area, the
Cameras
cameras they're
taking
gonna
pictures,
taking pictures
of you
people going through
crossing
red
an
lights.
intersection at an indiscreet moment.
You know, it's very interesting. I mean, there was pros and cons to both sides of that story. I mean, yes, I think it'll help to slow the traffic down because you have a lot of people that drive like maniacs in any town.
It's true.
And it does help to slow hopefully it slows them down. Do I like it for the other possible reasons where they capture you doing something right, but they're gonna now they have you on camera for? I know that's Big Brother's looking. I don't like that either.
Okay, so that would be a no.
That's an I don't know yet.
I'd
I'd have to study. I'd have
Well,
to study
it's
the results.
Yeah, right. Well,
If it slows
okay.
people down and saves lives, I don't have a
So-
problem with
I
it.
mean, I'll say I
Say
try
yes.
to give direct answers to your question. I'm not running because I'm unhappy about the red light camera policy.
No, I'm just
Right.
saying that
It's-
that is another
That's a headline.
possible inconvenience
It's not a
to
place where I'm
driving
gonna
into
beat up
White
the
Plains and
incumbents.
building business.
I agree with you.
You know.
For me, it's not a particular place where I'm going
Got
to
a
beat
lot
up
of
the incumbents, but I
traffic
hear what you're
lights
saying.
in the downtown.
A lot of traffic lights.
Yes,
A lot
right.
of traffic.
Okay. Now, this year's city budget, well, listen, we're rapidly running out of time, but any comments on where the budget is? Do you feel we need to increase it or decrease it?
I think the biggest problem with the budget is our city is falling into a trap of borrowing from Peter
Borrowing
to
to
pay
pay
Paul.
Paul.
And that has actually been a concern that I had, that we all have, because we don't need another bubble to burst, and we're left holding a bag that is going to set us back quite a bit. So that's one thing we definitely need to see change with how we've been running as a city.
Okay. Well, Saad Siddiqui, Alan Goldman, and Michael Kraver running for primary in the White Plains. You have been heard. Same for Jim Benerofe, John Bailey. Good night.
Good night.
For people to be heard.